Hello and welcome again to Connecting the Dots Bible Difficulties. I'm here with Moses.
Hi, Jim. How are you doing?
Great to have you all with us again. As we mentioned last week, we're going to continue the process of going through various chapters of the Bible. We started out with Matthew, the first chapter of the New Testament, and we're just going to go in sequence. And we just ask that you follow along, that perhaps you stop the video after the reading and just spend some time calling upon the same light that was present when the writers wrote the words that God desired for us to know, and ask for that same light to help you connect the dots. We'll talk about any Bible difficulties that people may have with some of what we read today. And as always, we invite your comments. We invite any questions that you have about scriptures or things that you want us to discuss on Bible difficulties. And we look forward to seeing your comments, as well as any people that you want to share that may have some interest in the scriptures, may have interest in the Bible, but don't necessarily want to join a group, don't necessarily want to get too involved, but just to have something, once a week. And I strongly encourage you, as I always say, about a chapter a day keeps the devil away. Again, a chapter a day keeps the devil away. So it is best that you daily read scripture and meditate on it and how it fits into your life. And you can overcome many problems by that practice. But I also encourage you, at least while we're doing this study, we're only going to be, say, doing a chapter a week rather than a chapter a day. But it may be helpful to read the next chapter after you do this study and then meditate on that the following week and see how God may help connect dots for you as well. But I assure you, I understand it's a chunk of time, and it's one of the reasons why I'm doing a chapter a week rather than a chapter a day, because I realize everyone's time is crunched, limited. We're all kind of on overload with the abundance that God is giving us right now through the internet and through various means, books, movies. The amount is endless. So again, we appreciate you taking time here. But I can assure you that if you take this time, an hour a week, to connect the dots, that it will monumentally increase your peace in life once you can have the Bible to rely on, once you can rely more and more on your faith, more and more on God's work in your life. It will have a monumental effect on the peace that you have about not only your eternal reward, where are you headed in the life to come, but also bringing that life into your present moment, into your life today. And that's really what this work is about. As I was growing up, there was an awful lot of concern about going to hell or going to purgatory or various fears. And so there was a lot of obligation to look at these things from a religious perspective, kind of to escape the fires of hell, rather than realizing that by doing this work, you're actually pulling heaven to earth. You're doing God's will here on earth as it is in heaven. So by doing so, you can also receive that grace, that joy, that peace that you will find as we get to heaven, and we have that eternally. We can have more and more of that here as we do that, connecting the dots here and understanding what is the will of God what is his destiny for my life. Yes, I have free will to do it my way, but if I do it his way, I'm more likely to find peace now rather than waiting for the hereafter. So that's what a lot of this work is about. Any thoughts on that, Moses, before we start in with the scriptures?
No, it's all good. I'm ready to start.
All right. So with that, again, I will simply read the chapter and you can feel free to follow along. And from there, I will allow a little time. You can take some time to meditate on it, pray on it, any thoughts that you may have on it. And then from there, we will have a short discussion after. Matthew chapter 2. The Magi visit the Messiah. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem, in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary. They bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. They escaped to Egypt. When they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up," he said, "take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him." So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I called my son." When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious. He gave orders to kill all the boys in Jerusalem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. Then what was said through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. "A voice is heard in Ramah, weeping in great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted because they are no more." The return to Nazareth. After Herod died, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who were trying to take the child's life are dead." So he got up, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning in Judah in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. Having been warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee, and he went and lived in a town called Nazareth. So was fulfilled what was said through the prophets, that he would be called a Nazarene. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
All right, so today, obviously, lots of prophecy fulfilled. So certainly, as you first start to learn about Scripture, you find that there are various prophecies given in the Old Testament. These were given in some cases hundreds of years before Christ, and many of them seem to contradict until you piece it all together. Unfortunately, Matthew pieced it all together for the Jewish people. Basically, Matthew was written for the Jewish people, the believers of Judaism, and so he writes in a way that is something that Jewish people would already understand. He doesn't explain a lot. Whereas Luke wrote more for the pagan audience, the non-Jewish audience, basically anyone else in the world besides Jews. So Luke tends to explain a whole lot more. Luke is one of my favorite books of the Bible just because he does try and make it as understandable as possible. So with that, feel free to take a few minutes and pause the video and then come back and we'll continue. All right, so any thoughts that you have, Moses, on any of this you want to chat about?
No, I would like just to hear you share your thoughts first, and I'll continue if I have anything else to add.
All right. Just a couple of things that I'll point out here, again, that unless you really start to look at Scripture yourself and start to piece things together, they can sound contradictory. Of course, we find the gift that we're given from the Magi, and those being, of course, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. That's kind of very, very common topic among religious circles about that pointing to the kingship as well as the priesthood, where frankincense is basically that smoke rising up from the incense, your prayers rising up to God. And then the myrrh is pointing to the death, that he will actually experience death to save the world. And so those gifts right out of the gate point to his destiny, point to his mission. And some of the other areas that can sometimes be confusing is being called out of Egypt. Talked a little bit last time about they will call him Emmanuel. Well, when is that? Who are they? Those things happened over a long period of time, even to this day. In the same way, here, he's from the town of Bethlehem, but his family were actually out of Nazareth. They went to Bethlehem because of the census, just being obedient to the law of the land. They were supposed to go there for the census, and during that time, Mary had the child. So, of course, then he ends up being from Bethlehem, being sent to Egypt, and then God will call him out of Egypt. Many times that can be also a sign for each of us. Being called out of Egypt is another way of saying being called out of the world and being called into your mission. So in one way, Moses was a prelude to all of that, where he was called out of Egypt, and then he was sent back to Egypt. So it's being sent back into the world once you've been prepared with your mission. And so that all that in the Old Testament can be a prelude to what is happening here with Jesus being called out of Egypt. And then ultimately being called a Nazarene. Well, is he from Bethlehem? Is he from Egypt? Where's he from? Well, he's also, he grew up in Nazareth, so in the district of Galilee. So that was actually his stomping ground. So as different groups of religious talk about him throughout the Bible, you can see how God fulfilled each of those prophecies during that time, and quite frankly, did so in a way that he could not have orchestrated it by writing the Bible after the fact. Many of these prophecies were given before those events took place, and many of those events were attested to by the people at the time, not just one set of scriptures, but multiple different witnesses writing accounts of what took place and how those prophecies were fulfilled. And quite frankly, the fulfilling of prophecies alone is probably one of the greatest proofs of Scripture. If you were to look at any other life, many times people talk about him being a great leader, a great teacher. But if you look at any other life, who had 10 things about their life fulfilled? 10 things written about them in years beforehand, centuries beforehand, and then they fulfilled, say, 10 of them. Well, it's said that Jesus fulfilled 333 prophecies about his life. That's pretty astounding. And so beyond just the idea that he was some great prophet, great leader, is the fact that there are things about him that no one else has ever come close to. Not talking about his power, not talking about his effect, his change on all of history, on the way that we look at history, but also just the completion of prophecy, not just 10, 20, 50, 100, but hundreds of prophecies. And so there are so many signs in Scripture that point us to the greatness of Jesus and point to the uniqueness of Jesus that we have to take a stronger, more profound look at his life and what Scripture says about him, and then make decisions based off of, as they say, look at the science. So even looking at the probability of certain prophecies occurring, say 10 of them, the statistical probability that those things could occur by chance is so far off the chart. And then when you get into hundreds of prophecies, well, anyone who is honest with themselves can see that there's something very different going on with Jesus. So any thoughts on that, Moses, before we tie things up?
No, just a comment. Some time ago, I was reading through this chapter, and it was a confirmation for me. Not that I had doubts about it, but it was just another confirmation for me that Jesus was special and not just a regular boy or a regular human, because of the gifts that he had received. Because those gifts they are not be given to just regular people. So uh, they knew that he was special, and they knew something about him that confirmed also that he is not just a regular boy or normal boy or just another
Absolutely.
person.
That's a good point. And, you know, who, especially in those days, is going to travel all those miles, kilometers, tens, I don't know exactly how far, they don't know exactly where they're from. We have some good ideas, but in any case, hundreds of kilometers and travel into a country that isn't your own, bringing gifts for some baby that's going to be born. I mean, it's so far beyond anything normal, as you point out. That has a lot of power as well in looking, which of course is why so many songs are written about it as well. It is quite a special event. And then lastly, I just want to point out that Joseph is a dreamer. When we see the Old Testament, Joseph was also a dreamer in the Old Testament. Joseph in the New Testament's a dreamer. I've certainly seen a lot of people do a lot of wacky things with their dreams, but I think, when you know the difference between God speaking to you in your dream and just a dream that you decide, oh, this means something, and you give it significance that may or may not be true. I'm sure that there were many confirmations. I know in my own life, never heard God speak audibly. My wife claims to. I know people that have claimed to. But I certainly have had impressions, and I've had things that line up in life. In my case, kind of connecting the dots of circumstances and what happens around you, what people say, and your prayer time, your time in scripture, your time in meditation, your dreams. All of these pieces come together to make the voice of God. God doesn't always speak in English. He doesn't always speak in Spanish. He doesn't always pick a language and speak audibly to people. He does at times, at his will, at his leisure. He hasn't for me in that way. But they were very clear things, and I have many, many stories about those, where he has brought together many miracles, many clear signs and wonders that told me very clearly that he is working, that he has certain things that he wanted accomplished, and he brought all the events to connect up to make that very clear. So I only say that to say that God can use dreams. With Mary, he came with the angel in person. So he's done, he does speak audibly directly to people or through angels. But many times people are confused about the voice of God. The voice of God is all of those things coming together. The voice of God is not just hearing him audibly, but being able to listen to the small voice of your own impressions and then see how he lines things up in your life to go along with what you feel called to do. So many times it's more of an art than a science, although there is a bit of a science to it as well that we'll talk more and more about as we go. But I just thought it worth mentioning that dreams here in this chapter happen to be one of those ways that God can get your attention, even to begin to ask questions in a more profound way. Any last thoughts, Moses?
No, it's all good. I'm looking forward for the next chapter.
All right. Well, adios for now.
All right. God bless you, Jim.
And just invite you one last time, feel free to share this with anyone that you think might find it of benefit. Once again, we appreciate your time and your comments. We're here to try to help in any way we can. So we appreciate your time. Until next week. Bye-bye.